Number 5. Dana Bradley. 14-year-old Dana Bradley disappeared from St. John's, Newfoundland on December 14, 1981. Dana had been hanging out that day at her friend's house after school. Dana was last seen hitchhiking on Topsail Road in St. John's. She was on her way home from her friend's house to attend a family birthday party. When Dana did not arrive, the family reported her missing to the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, or RNC. Witnesses saw Dana get into a four-door 1973 to 1976 Dodge Dart or Plymouth Valiant with a male driver. Dana's body was found 4 days later by a family out looking for a Christmas tree in a wooded area on Maddox Cove Road south of St. John's. Dana's skull had been fractured by a blunt object and she had been sexually assaulted. Dana was laid out in a burial fashion with her school books tucked under her arm. An intense investigation followed and has been described at the time as the most expensive and exhaustive murder investigation in Canadian history. Hundreds of people were interviewed, thousands of tips were received and investigated, and more than 800 cars were examined in the weeks following Dana's disappearance. In 1986, David Somerton confessed to and was charged with Dana's murder. But later he would recant this confession, saying that it was coerced and the murder charges against him were stayed. In 2006, the RCMP, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, reported that they were still receiving approximately 50 tips a year in relation to Dana's murder. Then, in May of 2016, a privately funded group conducted an excavation of 2 buried vehicles on a private property in the Witless Bay area near St. John's. The excavation was in response to an alleged eyewitness to the murder who claimed to have been in the car as a child when Dana was abducted. The car allegedly belonged to the father of the eyewitness, who claimed it was being driven by a family friend at the time. This car was later buried as landfill and was one of the 2 vehicles excavated. Unfortunately, due to extensive degradation, there was no usable evidence remaining in either vehicle. They had been buried for nearly 30 years, and there was contamination from sewage runoff and other chemicals. Also in May 2016, the RCMP announced that they had uncovered new DNA evidence in Dana's case. Retesting of a sample recovered in 1981 connected the murder to an unknown male subject. The new DNA evidence was also used to rule out existing suspects, including the man alleged to be the murderer in connection with the private excavation of the 2 vehicles that month. The investigation into Dana's murder remains open and active by the RCMP. They even have a room in their headquarters in St. John's known as the Dana Bradley Room. A sergeant with the RCMP has stated, quote, "The Dana Bradley investigation has never been cold. We work on the file every day and are following up on many leads. Currently, we are conducting interviews in Newfoundland and Labrador and all over Canada, testing forensic exhibits, obtaining DNA samples from persons of interest, conducting polygraph exams, and conducting a comprehensive exhibit audit." Unquote. Dana's murder remains unsolved to this day. Number 4. Rhona Duncan. On the evening of July 6, 1976, 16-year-old Rhona Duncan and her friends attended a house party on East Queens Avenue in North Vancouver, British Columbia. There were 60 teenagers in attendance. At 1 a.m., Rhona and her boyfriend left to walk home. With them were Rhona's best friend and her boyfriend. The 4 teens walked down the dark avenue, splitting into pairs when the 2 boys reached their homes first. The girls continued together. Around 2:45 a.m., the girls reached Rhona's best friend's home, where they parted ways, leaving Rhona to continue the rest of her walk home alone. She still had 5 blocks to walk. At 3 a.m., a neighbor who lived 3 doors down from the Duncan family heard a commotion outside. Her husband went outside to see what was going on, and he could hear an argument coming from the back of a residence a few doors down. This man yelled from his backyard, but he didn't get a reply, and it quickly became quiet. He waited for a while in his yard, listening to see if the arguing would continue. But the arguing ceased, so the neighbor went back inside. 9 a.m. the next morning, Rhona's body was discovered behind a neighbor's garage. Police were immediately called. A post-mortem exam would reveal that Rhona had been manually strangled as well as sexually assaulted. Several interviews were conducted with all of Rhona's close friends and outer social circle, along with several polygraph tests. Yet the case remains unsolved. In 1998, 22 years after Rhona's murder, a DNA profile was established to Rhona's unknown killer. During the initial investigation, RCMP investigators had a list of 172 males, comprised of Rhona's friends, acquaintances, persons of interest, and suspects. Now with the DNA profile police obtained, DNA samples from all these males were obtained, but none of the samples matched. Rhona's murder remains open and unsolved. Number 3. Kelly Cook. 15-year-old Kelly Cook from Standard, Alberta, received a call at 8:20 a.m. on the morning of April 22, 1981. A man calling himself Bill Christensen was asking about Kelly's babysitting services, as Kelly regularly did babysit for the townsfolk. The man asked Kelly to babysit for him that night. After checking with her mother, and because Christensen was a common name in town, Kelly agreed and made arrangements for Bill Christensen to pick her up after dinner that evening. At 8:30 p.m., a car pulled up in front of Kelly's parents' house. The driver did not leave his car, and Kelly walked out of her house and climbed into the front passenger seat. The car then immediately drove off. Kelly was supposed to call home after arriving at Bill's house, but no call came. And after a few hours passed, Kelly's parents contacted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or the RCMP, and a massive local search was launched but yielded no clues. Then, on June 28, 1981, roughly 2 months after Kelly's abduction, her body was discovered by a young man riding his dirt bike in Chin Lakes, which is an irrigation canal south of the town of Taber, southeast of Kelly's hometown of Standard. Due to the advanced decomposition of Kelly's remains, she had to be identified through dental records. Kelly had been bound with rope, weighed down with cinder blocks, and dumped into the reservoir. Her body was fully clothed, and the autopsy would reveal no signs of sexual assault. Strangely, while Kelly's body was at a funeral home in Calgary, an unknown man demanded to see her body. Even though he claimed to be a family friend, he was denied and eventually left. This man has never been identified, but authorities believe it may have been her killer. Despite major publicity, investigating over 2,000 possible suspects, and a $100,000 reward, Kelly's murder remains unsolved. Investigators reportedly said it was obvious someone had gone through a lot of work to make sure Kelly would never be found. But a drought in the area had lowered the water level and revealed her weighed-down body. At the time of Kelly's abduction, witnesses described Bill as a 30 to 45-year-old man, roughly 5 feet 10 inches, and having a medium to heavy build and dark hair. And at one time the police did circulate a sketch of this suspect. The RCMP believed that Kelly's murder was carefully planned over a 1 to 2 month period, because just a couple of days before Kelly was abducted, on April 18th, a man claiming to be Bill Christensen called another girl in town and asked her to babysit. The girl turned him down, but had passed on Kelly's number. Now this shows some premeditation, and may also indicate that Kelly was not the specific target. Kelly's murder remains unsolved, and the man claiming to be Bill Christensen has never been located. Number 2. Sharron Pryor. 16-year-old Sharron Pryor disappeared on March 29, 1975 after leaving her home in 𝓤𝓙𝓸𝓻𝓵𝓭, Quebec around 7:15 p.m. Sharron was going to meet some friends, including her boyfriend, at Marina's Pizzeria. The pizzeria, located at 2050 Wellington Street at the corner of Ash Avenue, was only about 5 blocks away, or a 5-minute walk from Sharron's home. Sharron left her house with her friend, but this friend wasn't heading to the pizzeria, so they parted ways almost immediately. Sharron's friend asked if she wanted her to walk with her to the pizzeria, but Sharron declined, and then Sharron crossed the street and went on her way. Sharron never arrived at Marina's Pizzeria, and when Sharron didn't come home that night, her mother began to worry. Sharron always called if she was going to be late. Sharron's mother reached out to her friends, who told her that Sharron had never showed up at the pizzeria. Sharron's boyfriend also had not seen her. One of her friends told her mother, quote, "I don't mean to worry you, Miss Pryor, but a woman was attacked on Ash Avenue around 7 p.m., unquote. So about a half an hour before Sharron Pryor left her home on March 29, 1975, a 23-year-old woman was attacked in Point St. Charles by a man wielding a knife. This suspect has come to be known as the Mustache Man. He is described as white, English, 6 feet tall, and about 200 pounds with a mustache. The incident occurred on Wellington Street, the same street as Marina's Pizzeria. The man had fled north through an alleyway, and it is possible that Sharron could have walked right into him. Sharron's disappearance turned from 1 day into 2, and as many as 100 kids and adults took to the streets searching for Sharron. Her mother went on TV and pleaded for the safe return of her daughter. But unfortunately, Sharron was found days later on April 1st, 1975, raped and murdered in another neighborhood across the river. Sharron was found in a field at 𝓤𝓷𝓭𝓮𝓻𝓆𝓏 in 𝓤𝓙𝓸𝓻𝓵𝓭 on Tuesday by a local beekeeper. Sharron had been badly beaten. She had choke marks on her neck. She also had choked on her own blood, her nose was broken, and the assailant had crushed her chest with his knee. Sharron was dressed in a suede coat, sweater, shoes, and socks. Her pants were about 6 feet away from her body, and her underwear were hanging from a tree. A branch was clutched in Sharron's hands. There was blood and branches in her hair. A man's shirt was found at the scene, and detectives concluded that this was used to bind her. A receipt was found at the scene with Sharron's name on it. A tire mark was observed along with a footprint of a man thought to have weighed about 200 pounds. An autopsy would reveal Sharron had been raped, and the blows to her head were most likely caused by a pointed instrument, maybe a ring. There was partially chewed tape found in her hair, meaning that Sharron was most likely gagged. The autopsy also revealed that Sharron most likely died Tuesday afternoon, which would mean she was held captive from Saturday evening through Tuesday morning. In 2004, police received a tip that Sharron may have been held captive at a garage space on 2107 Rue Févard, 1 block south of Marina's Pizzeria. Police tested the site for DNA, but results were inconclusive. Sharron's blood was not identified, and Sharron's mom would reveal in 2016 that this had turned out to be a bogus tip. Reportedly, Sharron's family has confirmed that the 𝓤𝓙𝓸𝓻𝓵𝓭 police destroyed the original evidence in Sharron's murder, which will make the case that much more harder to solve. Sharron's murder remains unsolved to this day. Number 1. Kerrie Brown. On October 16, 1986, 15-year-old Kerrie Brown disappeared from a house party on Trout Avenue in Thompson, Manitoba. Kerrie had gone to the party with her best friend, but wanted to leave when her ex-boyfriend showed up with another girl. Kerrie planned to stay the night at her best friend's house. The two girls left the residence together, but returned when Kerrie's best friend realized she left her purse inside. Her best friend got into an argument then with her ex-boyfriend, and by the time she was ready to leave, Kerrie had disappeared. When the best friend left the house, she saw Kerrie's footprints in the snow ending at tire tracks, indicating that Kerrie had gotten into a vehicle. Kerrie's father reported her missing at about 4 p.m. on Friday, October 17, 1986. On the afternoon of October 18, 1986, less than 40 hours after Kerrie was reported last seen, 2 horseback riders found her body murdered in a graveyard on the outskirts of Thompson, Manitoba. Kerrie was found wearing a pink and black leopard print outfit and white socks. She was lying on a jacket with one hand up and the other down. Kerrie had been sexually assaulted and beaten to death with branches. At the scene were tire tracks, a red and blue air mattress, and a black rubber car mat. It is thought maybe a vehicle used the mattress and the rubber mat to get unstuck from the mud at the scene. Nobody has ever been convicted of Kerrie's murder, but police did initially have a prime suspect, 22-year-old Patrick Sumner. A witness told police he saw 2 vehicles leaving the area where Kerrie was found dead on the night of her disappearance, a 70s muscle car and a white van. The description of the muscle car matched Sumner's car. Hairs consistent with Kerrie's were found in Sumner's car. Also reportedly, police had found a stain in Sumner's car, and a shirt was found in his household that contained blood that matched Kerrie's blood type. Many people also claimed to see Sumner washing his car the day after Kerrie's disappearance. Sumner was arrested and charged with first-degree murder less than a week after Kerrie's death, but a judge stayed the charge during the preliminary hearing 4 months later because of a lack of evidence. Sumner maintains to today that he did not have anything to do with Kerrie's murder. In the years that have followed, police have found at least 2 DNA profiles in relation to Kerrie's murder, but still, to this day, Kerrie's murder remains unsolved. And Kerrie's murder is Manitoba's RCMP's largest unsolved case. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to hear more cases like this, please subscribe to my channel, hit the thumbs up button, and maybe, if you would be so kind as to leave a nice comment down below. If you would like to suggest cases to me, you can email me at unjustcrimes@gmail.com.